Oops, not that. Boy, sorry for the inconvenience here, guys. Hmm. Is that better? Hey, you got it? Yeah, it's just really strange. I think maybe explain that. Now it's working. I think we had some issues, for example, a couple of sessions ago with the actual chat line, and we went through and changed some of the systems, and I thought it was updated as far as audio goes. But I think I've seen that the mic auxiliary piece is streaming back and forth. So hey, very good. Thanks, Demetrius, for pointing that out. I usually hit the mic unmute button and started to speak, and all of a sudden nothing came up. So thanks for the information here. So let's start over again. Hey, welcome to the Dream Labs with Dr. Contrast Live. And Demetrius, it's good to have you on board as always. Really great to see that you're part of the process here. And I'm going to go through some things here. As I stated here, I think last week, there was an interesting set of circumstances. I got some notes from my YouTube viewers. One person in Japan sent me a note stating that did you ever do something from the very beginning, like automobile design from the very beginning from scratch? And I said, yeah, we can do that. And the more I thought about it, I think it might be a good time today to start this whole series. And it might be a series of maybe 2 or 3 lessons about how to put this all together. But I'm going to start today with the transportation design proportional pieces. And I think a lot of this has to come down to, from my experience at any rate, when you're going through the drawing process, no matter what the design process is, there's a certain formulation in terms of keeping things in order that begin to help you balance things out and make your sketch work or your idea generation successful. So I'm going to start here with a system today, getting into just a basic fundamental proportion about how to put together proportion, then convert that proportion into maybe some perspective studies, just in line, so you can see how this all comes together. And again, I'm going to up front too. I'm going to be very careful too. Before we go any further with this, when we started today, this might be a phase 1 start. It's just getting the proportions down. What a 1-box, 2-box, and a 3-box system is, how we work with it, then convert that into a perspective study, show how that operates, maybe in just 1-point perspective, then move into maybe the next lesson might be, for example, transportation design, shading or proportion, phase 2, getting into shading and surface definition. So let's start with this. And notice here there are 3 layouts ahead of time here to save some time. There's a 1-box operation, a 2-box operation, and a 3-box operation. Hey, Chip, how are you, man? Good to have you on board. You still in the meeting, or are you okay? Just thanks so much for joining us. Again, transportation design proportion. To me, over the course of my career and over time, there's nothing more critical and nothing more, to me, vital than understanding how to put together proportions. Hey, no meetings, so hey, very good. If they sneak up on you, but again, hope they don't sneak up on you, Chip, and thanks for joining us. But over the course of time, I think the most important, when I work with students or in the workshops, especially in transportation design, I spend a lot of time setting up proportion. How does it work? What do you deal with? What are the vanishing points? What do the drive lines look like? How do you set up the scale? All these things become so important in putting it all together. So let's go back and review here. 1-box system, a 2-box system, and a 3-box system. Back to this face again. This is ultimately called a 1-box because it's basically primarily set up for SUVs and some crossovers that have a certain almost rectangular box system to it. So in the industry, we designate it as a 1-box operation. But one thing always remains true, no matter what you go with, whether it's 1, 2, or 3-box systems, there's always, you lay down the wheel, for example, you get that Worsfield plant, and then take always proportionally for the right wheelbase and overall length and certain scale on a platform. Hey, Shattuck, how are you, man? Good to see you. Hope you're feeling better. Good to have you on board here. So when you start with this proportion process, it always begins with get that first wheel down, and I'm going to explain this first, and I'll go through the process in terms of getting things done from a sketch rendering, just in line form to get it started today with proportion. Again, getting the box systems in. Hey, Captain Nemo, how are you, man? Good to have you on board. By the way, I want to thank you, Captain Nemo. You're doing some great things with the coffee decoration work. That's very good. That's fun to see. So again, you get that first wheel down, then come back 1, 2, 3 tire diameters, bring it right back to wheel size, and then plant that 4th wheel. That setup right there from front to rear is a pretty good overall successful line story in terms of putting together all the things we needed to come together with here. So that's a basic proportion. Now the heights will change and the overhangs will change. Notice even in a 1-box system here, there's a very, very limited overhang series here. So all the wheels are out in the corners and it's pushed right to the limit lines. So it gives gives you a one-box operation. Again, I think it got that designation as a one-box system because it's more rectangular, more SUV size, and some crossover systems that kind of look at it from the point of view of one box. So that takes care of that guy. Now, a two-box situation, again, same process comes together. You plant that first wheel, count 3 back, and that second wheel, and that sets up your wheelbase. Now, the difference here is, for example, notice the difference in the hood system from a very short overhang to a very long overhang. So all of a sudden, we have a two-box system where this lower portion here becomes the body form, the body in white. Then the upper is designated as box number 2, whether it's a full, in this case, like a coupe or a 2-door series. And I realize too, some hatchbacks can be a 4-door or 2-door series, but that's basically what it is. So what we're looking at here is a one-box system down below and another box up on top that designates what the upper is doing. So that becomes pretty traditional for a coupe system or a small hatchback of some sort. So that becomes a 2-box Empire. Now, the strange one is the third one, the 3-box, same set of circumstances. Again, tire goes down, 1, 2, 3 back, set up the wheelbase with that last 4 wheels. That's your wheelbase from front to rear. That sets it up standard proportion all the way through. No matter what the scale of the vehicle is, it's always going to be 3 tires back to get that wheelbase to be established. Now, let's go back to 3-box. Now, again, same process here. The lower box designated, this is odd. This one goes from here to here. That becomes your 1-box. The 2-box is the upper again that separates itself. Notice the add-on here is a 3-box, which is designated a trunk. Now, it's kind of a storage space. Kind of an odd situation now, because most of those situations come back. That trunk space can be part of the upper, and the configuration can change them a little bit dramatically from one point to another. But nonetheless, that basically sets up all 3 of these systems and how they begin to work. And again, I'll go through some things in this whole series. I would probably designate this one more of a, this whole series and streaming is more of a, like a, if I can use a term here, more instructional, more fundamental thinking in terms of how to get together and how to put together a real good, successful proportional sketch for transportation design. It doesn't mean, for example, that you don't use the same system in some cases, for example, in product design or architectural interior space, but more so in automobile design. It's a much more critical setup in terms of getting these forms. Because again, one of the things about getting this whole idea down of getting the box systems in is, and I want to make this very clear from the very beginning, what we didn't, I didn't say earlier on, but I want to make sure we stress now. No matter what the system is, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 box, once you have the fundamentals down and begin to see how the proportions work, then it's all kinds of fun, because now you can take those fundamentals and really cheat the paradigm. And I don't mean cheat with distorting it and going crazy with a lot of off-the-wall proportional changes, but you can take the proportions and flatter them, because you know how the system sets itself up. And I'll show you that hopefully at some time, if there's some future streams. So let me move along here. That was the first one we want to look at. Again, I'll come back and review these as we go here, but this is where it started. And just to show you how this operates and to get a perspective, I thought I'd do a very quick little fundamental perspective study here about how this whole thing in perspective really begins to operate. Notice, once again, you get the horizon line down, you pick a central vanishing point, and as we've said in some areas in the past, in some conversation, this is where we're standing, looking at this vehicle. Notice again, I've done the same thing. I put the 1 box, the tire down, come 3 back, set the second back, but I put it inside a frame. This would represent that SUV, that 1-box platform. It can be a little taller, of course. But now notice I'm drawing through it to get the VP to work, back to VP, back to VP, and find out where that backside tangent line is. Let's kind of break that in there just a little bit. When that backside box is, that tells me what the overall environment is in that 1-point perspective. And I'll show you in a minute how you convert this into a perspective study by putting some body form on it. So again, this is when the eye level is a little bit above you, and you're looking down at it. Notice again how really limited this proportion set is. And obviously, the more you drop this system, the more open this upper is going to get. And it kind of distorts the perspective a bit. So there's always a good, safe limit line about where to set that VP and how to set the width. And I'll go through that in the time to come as well. So this would be the this is down below the eye level. This is where you actually split the eye level down below. Notice the same thing again. Here's the 1-box system here up front. There's my front wheel. I count 3 back, rear wheel, or vice versa. But again, notice I've set my vanishing point over here, and this is still a 1-point system, and I'm driving those lines right back to vanishing point, and then here is an axle, and an axle coming through. That axle is going to tell me where the back wheel is. That axle is going to tell me where the back wheel is. So I'm drawing through the actual frame So how we see it all works, how it begins to function. So knowing that, I mean, these are little things that make a huge difference in setting up, for example, the classic case of putting together sketches that make a huge difference. So once again, in review, you've got 3 basic box systems: the single, the 2, and the 3 box. Number one, the 1 box is SUVs and some crossover systems. The 2 box is basically coupes and maybe some hatchbacks or fastbacks. And the 3 box is typically sedans configuration, but that 3rd box being a trunk designated area that sets you up. Now that you know that, this is what it looks like. You can start to convert that into perspective just a little bit. And it doesn't take an awful lot to kind of put it all together in terms of seeing how this thing will be up. And I thought this was interesting, a good point of reference to add to the mix here today, to show you how this thing sets up in perspective. And then with that thought in mind, again, eye level above you, looking up at it, a little bit, probably down on it. And in this one, almost an eye level, just at normal. This is where you're standing, looking at this vehicle. So let's go back and convert this. Let's learn to practice that. If I take this whole operation, let's do this, and we come back here just for a moment. Get these lined up. If I go back and really hit this, I'm going to come back in. Let's put this into practice. Let's go here. Let's get that first wheel in place. Come back in here. Let's get a ground line down. Draw through it, and then come back 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's bring that up to speed. Let's kind of find where that center line is here. I'm working very lightly first here to kind of set the proportion up a bit. Now I'm going to put the body form in. This is an elevation study here. Now, let's get this down. Let's take this through. Very simple form. I'm not going to talk about design here so much as I am just getting the proportions set. So let's get this wheel in place, beef it up a bit. Let's get this guy in place, beef it up a bit. Now notice there's a simple, that's what we start with. That's what I refer to as an elevation. That's just a simple little, oops, let's get this guy here straightened up here. At elevation, center line, and the center line. There's an elevation setup right there. We're just starting with that very simple process here, and I'll come back into it again. Get the ground line down. Now, here's what I'm going to switch gears here. Up here, I'm going to set up my horizon line. This is my vanishing point right here. I'm going to pick a point of reference right here. There's my vanishing point. Now, notice, this is where we kind of take it downhill just a bit here and go from step to step to step. I'm going to take these hard points, that one, that hard point, that hard point, and that hard point, and drive it right back to VP. There. And I'm going to close it in. And while I'm going to stop right there, let's go back to this sketch just for a moment. Look at the relationship we're building here. Look how that begins to set itself up one to the other. There's the actual elevation on top. Here's the actual frame drawing. What I'm doing now is putting this upper sketch into practice by doing the following here. There it is. I think I can get that to work just a bit. Let's get this up here. There it is there. Now notice how that's all coming together here. There it is. Elevation, drive line, vanishing point, my horizon line, and then these drive lines going back to set up that proportion. So there we are there. Let's go back and finish the sketch off. Now I'm going to pick a width. Draw through it. Where they connect, that's it. Now, this point of reference, back to VP. My windscreen, for example, might be here. Draw that back to VP. Now, notice, I'm just picking these up. That back line here. Put a little bit of design line in this thing here. Now, let's go back in and pick this up. I can go here. I can put a radius in that windshield here. I bring that front end there a little bit. So let's get this into place here. And again, drive through this. And then drive through this. Pardon me as I move this thing around a little bit, get those vanishing points through. Now, come back in through here. Back inside the rim. Back inside the rim. And again. Center line, enter. This might have a bit of a different vista glass up on top, so I put that little cut line in there, bring that over the top. Put a pillar in place. Even the shadow goes right back to vanishing point. Back to vanishing point. A little bit of tint down here to give it some presence. And what I want you to notice here is look at how those wheel centers kind of drive back in perspective here, how this thing's just going to drive back a little bit. Notice we're out front here, out front, and it goes back. Here's my center line. I'm going inside the rim. I'm going right back inside again, and I can come back in and add all kinds of little detail things in here to kind of put it all together. But notice it all comes back. That 1 point perspective is driving that line back. Let's put this back a little bit more shadowed here. And there it is. There's a simple little 1 point study based on that whole process of putting together what this guy is telling us what to do. And there it is. So this is going to get into the other. Got a question here from Captain Nemo. I'll address it here. Isn't that a bit cheating? I think you used the term adequately. If my memory serves right, when the eye line is above the object, the 1 point perspective should normally turn into a 2 point perspective because you also look down at the object. So your plane is no longer parallel to you, but tilted towards you, and there would be another VP in the far bottom. I don't know if that's really a case here, Captain Nemo. Yeah, you do get almost a sense of a 2 point system here, but notice all the drive lines are going back to this one horizon line here, this one VP where you're standing. So I'm not quite sure, but 2 point perspective, because you also look down at the object so that the near plane is no longer parallel to you but tilted towards you. Well, that would almost move into a 3 point system where I actually tilt the picture plane, but I'm keeping that facing plane parallel to my eyes at all times, like I'm doing here, Nemo. This still remains parallel to my eyes. That whole rectangular 1 box system right there is parallel to my eyes, so therefore it's not leaning toward me, it's standing upright. Vertical line would vanish below. I mean, the vertical lines would vanish below. Vertical lines would vanish below. Vertical lines would vanish below. Yeah, I think, oh, okay, I see what you're getting at. Yep. Yeah, you can do that kind of cheat a little bit here, but I think the basic premise here I'd like to get across is the fact that you get into this system, that facing plane is coming right at me, just standing right upright, then I'm just taking it right back in perspective, and then using the VPs to kind of set it all up here. So I hope that kind of clarifies it for you there. You could use that as an argument, as a state, but I think it's much more acceptable or much more reliable to actually take advantage of that facing plane, never moving, and all the drive lines going back to VP, and then seeing through it from that point of view. So, make sense? So far, a good question, very good question. It is cheating in a sense because you are really dramatized. Notice the difference in drive line from this slope to that slope. And the more you move away from this thing, the more you move this VP over, or the more you drop the form, the more dramatic that's going to get. So that's basically what you're after here. So this is cool, the portion number one. Let's go back to something a little more typical at eye level. Let's kind of hit that drive line. Let's get that base line down here, my ground line. Let's get that first wheel in place. Again, let's take it right back. 1, 2, 3, 4 back. So there I am. So this is where I started. Just going to get this guy lined up. That's where I ended up. There's my VP. There's my drive line there. Now, let's put the body form in place. Bring it across. Now, in this case, let me stop right there just for a moment here. This now becomes my facing plane right here up front, and then this is where I'm driving back to that horizon line. This sketch, in essence, is very close to what we're doing with this guy right here. So that becomes part of that process. And notice how we're just, even though there's a very subtle drop here, that's very extreme, that means that VP is closer to me. In this case, that vanishing point is way out there, so I'm actually stretching that VP line way out here to the horizon line. So, but the mechanics remain the same. So there we are. Let's go back and move on with this guy here. Let's get these guys organized. Let's go back and get this guy running here into the cowl area. Now let's come back in and add some graphics here. Into center line. Get this back in place here. Down the ground. Now, let's get this guy lined up here. Wheels. Outside rim. Outside rim. Just take it back in space. Take this back in space. Notice how they're collapsing back just a bit there. Get all together. Oh, and there's sketch number 2. Putting it together here with a simple little series of, again, same 1-point perspective, how to take that same elevation. Now turn it just a little bit. Here we're looking down on it a little bit. Here we're looking right at it. My eye level is right about in through here. Let's kind of put that in place here. So my eye level is right about there. So I'm just about right through. Here's my horizon line, roughly speaking. And here's my horizon line up here, roughly speaking. There it is. So I'm driving those points way back out here to a vanishing point, in this case, way out to on my right-hand side. So let me stop there for a moment. Any questions so far here, gang? I'm just taking a simple look at the one box process and putting it into perspective and putting some proportion down based on that wheel count of lay down that first tire, come back 3 and hit that second one, and there's your wheelbase. Same thing here, same process here. We're laying 1 down, coming 1, 2, 3, 4 back. There's your wheelbase, and you're all set to go. And little by little, you've got that proportion coming together nicely for you. So what do you think, Nemo? Is this making sense for you? Great question, by the way. I really appreciate that input. Good stuff. I'll just hang on here for a minute and get a response. Let me just tune this up just a bit more. Put a little bit of tone in this thing. There we go. So there we are. There it is, gang. There's another phase right there. That's kind of like the first set at it here. Looking at some of the proportion we're dealing with here, all predicated on getting that 1 box, 2 box, and 3 box system to get the proportions set. And it all comes down to tire size. Get that first wheel in place. Count 3 back. Let's do this just so we're after here. There's my first start. There's 1. There's 2. There's 3. And there's my proportion. There's my wheelbase from there to there. Got it. Next step. Well down, come 1, 2, 3. There I am. 3 back. There's my wheelbase. And again, proportion is going to change a little bit from object to object. In this case, we're working with a 1 box system for now, which is basically SUV, some crossovers, just to kind of get a good start here on what this whole process might begin to look like as we move from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3. So today I'm just going to concentrate on getting the proportion down with wheelbases and overall scale, and then a little bit of time come together here. Let's put some sketches together based on a little bit of shading work, a little bit of maybe some rendering work. Let's take it from one step to another. Hey, another question. Yes, of course. I was referring to the effect you get, for example, when you look up at a skyrise building. The vertical lines vanish in the sky, but I can think of the angle for such a low object is too small. So yeah, I think that's well said, Nemo. That's exactly what happens. So good observation there, Doctor. Much appreciate the input. So once again, there's another little phase sketch. Let's go further, a little further here. Move the scale up a bit. Let's see what happens with this stuff. Now let's get this ground line down. Let's open this up. Let's just see what happens here. Let's get this down to a really good. Let's get the ground line down. I'm still going to work with this very low, typical 1-point change. I think this is a good exercise here for those of us who are starting to draw transportation design work. I always like to start with almost like an elevation and begin to move it up a little bit and change it in perspective, which will show you a little bit of time later. Let's get the wheel set. Let's go back into here. There's 1. Let's go 1, 2, lightly. 3, and again 4. Now you'll notice as I'm going back, and an interesting thing happening here. Notice I'm taking that same proportion as I'm going back. I'm receding it a little bit so it goes wider, a little bit narrower, because that's what's happening with the distortion of the shape, or the actual scale of that tire. It'll actually shrink a little bit as it goes back in perspective. A little trick to kind of, it will not remain a full circle back here, or a strong maybe 60-80% ellipse or circle guide. So let's go back in. Let's get this ground line down. Just draw through it. Let's get that contour in place in the upper. Transfer it over. And again, into center line. Let's get that portion here. Let's get that all set up. Let's bring this into play here. Not talking so much about design here, just getting some of the proportions set here. So we got to work with it here to deal with as we go down the line. Now, let's come over the top here with this. Drop it in. Come back uphill. An extreme kind of a get those wheels out in the corner, and there's a pretty good little elevation sketch or proportional sketch on how this thing comes together. Notice again, I started with getting this all set. One, taking it 1, 2, 3, 4 back. Now let's get the center lines in place here. Let's find out where we are. Axle. Let's bring this out. On the ground. And a little bit of tint. Just really rough little sketches. We're going to get this whole principle of getting that 1, 2, and 3 box system all put together so we know where we're going with this stuff here. How to begin to set up the portions. Drive lines. A bit of shadow, a bit of impact on some of the spear lines on the body form itself, just drawing through it. All set up on a little bit of fun with this guy. Overhead lighting. Yeah, let's just do a little bit of that into it. Just a little bit of tint. And there it is. Just some simple little concept sketch here, guys, of what that portion looks like. So far, what do you think, guys? Making sense for you? Coming along all right? Again, the purpose of today's stream is to get that proportion. So critical to start with the right proportion in terms of how to work with those, how to work with those really interesting little aspects of getting the wheelbase. Start the first tire, go 3 back, plant it, there it is, same size. Notice in this case it's moving a little bit because I'm moving away from my station point, and the more I move away from it, the more this is going to diminish. It's going to get really not shrunken but smaller in diameter. For example, if this is a 45-degree circle here or a 50-degree circle, back as I go back, it'll reduce by 10. This will go from 55 down to 45 and so on. And then this far side will open up to, this is 55, this will open to 65. So up plus 10, minus 10. All these little things I'll start to cover in the next few lessons as we go down the line here. So you ready to go here again? Let's just try another one here. Same process, down to eye level. Let's get this down to ground. Let's get that first wheel planted. Come back 1, 2, 3, and 4. So there we are. That's the basic setup right there. Going back into this. Let's make sure we got the right height there. Good. Where my center line is. Back where my center line is. Get that all set. Now, the body line. Let's get this graphic in here. Very simple shape. You're not worried about design yet. I'm just going to come back and get the contours down. Basically the same overall form, just moving it around perspective as best we can here. There's its start. I'll come back in again, bring the baseline in, bring that through. Let's get this guy all set up. And again, let's get this up. Little thumbnail steps, there it is, and same basic proportion again. Enjoy this ride. Hey, very good. I hope it's making sense for you, Chip. Good stuff. I'm wondering too why I'm doing these circles. This camera might distort these circles. I'm on the pad, I'm nice and round, but on the image itself, it's kind of tilted a little bit. So apologies there, guys. So there it is. Let's find out where our centers are. Let's get the ground line established. There it is there. There it is there. Put a detail in this guy. Again, part of the silence here, I just really want to concentrate on understanding or getting the form down, that this whole idea of getting those wheelbases set is everything. Getting it down and nice and simple, just very good. Wheel down, 3 back, wheel down. That's it, proportion. And everything else kind of adjusts from there. I'll go into some of the details later on in some of the streams about how to set up windscrew and ankle, how to put up tumble home, how to lean in the shape and so forth, and how to illustrate and begin to render a form of some sort. So all that's coming, gang. Let's put a little bit of highlight on this guy. Put a pillar in place. Put a horizon line running that through. To get this all set up. Let's get that outside rim. There it is there. Outside rim, there it is there. Notice a little bit of that lean there tells me that wheel disc is crowned. So there we are there. It's going to get this in place. There it is there. Now the question might come up, how do I know what this distance is between tire to tire? If I look at the front span, I take that same dimension as I go back, it opens up just a little bit. So I'm going to stretch that just a little bit to go from this weight, which is here, to that weight. Transaxle down below, maybe let's kind of tone that in, a little bit of body underneath the guy here. But notice that distance is almost identical to that. I just stretch it just a little bit to kind of get the proportion to read for me here. So let's go back into this. A little tint on that form. The shadow on the inside. Shadow on the inside. Some more definition inside that. And then again, inside that. A bit of graphics. A little bit of graphics. And again, a little bit of color. A little bit of horizon line. Nope, let's bring this around here. Some badging. Exaggerate the ground plane a little bit, and there you go. There's a couple of little thumbnail studies on that same process of watching how it all begins to come together once you put that whole process down of getting that wheel planted, 3 back, wheelbase. Everything else comes off of this whole process we started with. For example, we'll go back to the review here very quickly. Not a review, but just to show you where we started. This whole thing came about as a result of understanding, there's that one box in elevation. Here it is in perspective, in 1-point perspective. And again, for review purposes, all I've done here is this. I've taken that same, this now becomes my facing plane. It's right here. It's up. There's the box right in through here. And I'm driving back, and in this case, my vanishing point is way out here to my left. Hopefully, is that making sense here, guys? If you're still with me, a little bit of feedback would be helpful. Is this, am I communicating all right, clearly here about what's happening with these actual one box setups, and how to move it from an elevation into a perspective and 1-point perspective? 2-point will come later. We're going to add this to the. I'm going to make this a very different series of lesson plans here to kind of go through the process based on. Yeah, very good, Chip. Thank you. How about you, Nemo? You still with us? Very cool. Yeah, it can be a very formidable and intimidating setup to put proportion together, especially in transportation design. As I said in the very beginning of the stream too, what's really interesting about this, I am simulating. All right, you're going to simulate. Very good, excellent. What I said earlier was really interesting. We got a lot of curves from mentions of boxes. We got a lot of curves from mentions of boxes. Yeah, we do. When you go, that's an interesting point, Chip, and we'll get into that a little bit later. You've been a very sensitive point. It all starts with a 1-box system, and again, in the industry, it all started there. For example, giving that SUVs and then coupes, and now sedans. And all started with a 1, 2, and 3 box. I got to simplify the process to get the basically the claim modelers and some of the technical engineers on board with a set of proportion. But once that's established, I said earlier in the stream, and I think it's something worthwhile repeating here before we sign off here. What's really interesting about the whole process to me, that once you have the one box system set up, it's really interesting how it changes and it becomes much more formidable in terms of curves and organic shapes, which is interesting, Chip, because I'm glad you brought that up. The reason that's significant is because once you have the process down, you can use that process to kind of flatter the forms and shape and to begin to cheat the curves and the sweeps in certain, very much so, more so in organic shapes. But the more voluptuous a form is, the more you have to cheat the shape and to make it read right. And I'll get into that much later on here in some of the future streams we're dealing with here. But that's a great point, because it starts with a box, but everything inside is organic. So how do you handle that? That's another set of lessons altogether. How do you make that form cheat nicely and get it all to work? So again, this is what we're after here. Let me just do this way. Sign that guy, that's it. Get that official. Make this one official too. And if I sign this guy here, but let's make sure we get it all set up. So that's that. I'll go back and review here in just a moment. But anybody else, any commentary at all? Just really good stuff here, guys. I thought it's just, to me, a good start in terms of keeping things simple and beginning with the very premise of getting an understanding about how that 1, 2s, and 3s work and how to put it into perspective from an overhead point of view, which we did with this one, I believe here. With an overhead, looking down on it, and then getting back down to normal eye level here. Just get through real quick thumbnail sketches. And then coming back into the second sketch where it's much more normal eye level, just keeping it nice and easy. All I've done here is just shifted started with an elevation, so to speak, and shifted my vanishing point out, in this case to the right, simple elevation here. And what I've done is just shifted my vanishing point out to the left. Both 1-point perspectives, nothing changed there at all. There's been no distortion from right to left. It stays very parallel here. And the clue is some of the drive lines, parallel, 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 which keeps it in a 1-point perspective. Like, how can you change the angle in 1-point perspective? Gives a whole new look. Yeah, it does. It really does. Incredibly difficult. What seemingly is a very difficult process can be very simply explained by just using that horizon line and VPs and the box system to move it around, Demetrius. And that's what's coming here. I thought, again, this whole stream came together very thankfully because of a young lady who was an aspiring designer, sent me a note. She was from Japan, sent me a note and asked me a question about a week or 10 days ago. But do you ever start a whole process of teaching how to draw a car from scratch? And so the more I thought about it, then I began to think in terms of once I got the last two systems down with interior space and some of the other things we were working on, went back and put together a lesson plan on this very subject matter, beginning with a very fundamental truth about getting the box systems in and working from there on through. So I hope she picks it up and sees it on YouTube. I hope I get some feedback from her as well as from you all as well. So it's been very, very encouraging to see what has come about with this guy. So it's just a unique set of circumstances. And just before I head out here, let me show you what I mean by that one box system. Let's see if I rotate the whole thing enormously. Let's see if I do this. And I set up a box here, same thing. Let's open that up just a bit. And I change that vanishing point. I do really a very dramatic, almost like that. What happens there? There's my horizon line. Now, if I come inside that, what am I going to do with that now? Same set of circumstances. Let me just kind of beef this up a bit here so you can see it. There it is there. There it is there. There's my one box system. That's what we're talking about here to get this down. There's my drive line. Here's my vanishing point. I'm going to draw through it. I'm going to draw through it. And I'm going to pick up that backside corner, back in through here. Now that's what I'm seeing. That's that one box system, still a 1 point perspective. Now how do I break that up? Very same process. Come back in, set up a wheel. There it is, tire. Now come back in again. 1, 2, 3, 4. How much that diminishes. There's my last tire right there. It's that to that. Now I'm going to come across from center line, drive it across, then come back to this side. Draw through it, draw through it, and again, get that same circle over here. There's my wheel plant right there. There it is. And then again, in the backside, that's what I'm seeing right there. That's how that opens up. Now let's find the perspective center. Here's my center line on the cylinder, but I'm going to extend that out by doing this. This is now my center line. This is now my center line. Upper. Again, center line through, center line back. SUV. Real quick rapid sketch showing how it all functions and how that one box system begins to work no matter how far you rotate this thing. A little bit of a different format here as far as drawing is concerned. Bit of shadow down in this guy. And there it is. How to run Dock-A, very good. I changed the angle 1% gives a whole new look. Yeah, that's it. Does that make sense, gang? Basically the same set of circumstances we're dealing with here. Take much more of a run here, getting that angle on set, but that's basically the same premise. Notice it's still a one box system, still 4 back, and the whole process worked as is. So there we are, gang. Let's hope that all wraps it up here. Really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Chip, thank you so much. Demetrius, always good to have you on board, and Captain Nemo, always a pleasure to have you on board as well. So really great to have you guys join in the little exercise here today. I'm getting some proportions down, and I'm going to just take a moment here and go back to a real quick review before we end up here as far as the screen is concerned. There it is. So we started here again with a one box, or the box system of getting the 3 systems down. It's the 1 box for SUVs and crossovers, the 2 box for basically some coupes and some hatchbacks, then the 3 box that's primarily sedans, and in some cases maybe some wagon variants as well. So that was where we started. Now I took that same process and worked it into a 1-point perspective, showing how they get the wheels down, And oh, by the way, that's what this was for here. Once you get that front tire down, take it 3 count back. That's your wheelbase. It sets it up right there in all 3 cases. That's how that all got started. So we started with that one. Came into this guy, which kind of put into perspective, looking down on the object itself. The same process, drawing through the box itself. There's the wheel, 3 back wheel, rear wheel. Same thing now, eye level, a bit more normal. Same thing. The wheel first wheel down, 3 back, set the wheelbase back here, and again drawing through it, see where the backside tires are. Then putting this into practice, just putting in some point perspective, and showing how above eye level what that starts to look like when you're looking down on the object itself, how it all drives back to one vanishing point here on the horizon line. And all the critical thing here is to remember where all those hard points goes. Back to VP, back to vanishing point, back to vanishing point, back to vanishing point. So that all drives back into the reality of dimension. Same process now, dropping it down to normal eye level, where again, in this case, the actual box is out here, and we're driving those drive lines back to a vanishing point here on the horizon line to the right-hand side. Then the last one we did was, again, a little bit larger scale, but the same principle in operation. We actually take, and again, here's the box sitting here, the front, the one box is right here, and then we're driving back, in this case, vanishing point to the right-hand side through the horizon line. And then the same thing down below, where we actually take the box itself, it's here, then the drive lines are going, in this case, off to the left. But again, that sets the premise, and the most important thing in the lesson today was to get down to what the 3 box systems represent, and how to set up a wheelbase and proportion from there. So that's phase 1, and we'll try to pick it up maybe next week on some other things like shading, and go back in a little bit of perspective, maybe 2-point perspective, and show how that operates, and how to build an automobile or a vehicle design from the ground on up. So thank you so much for joining forces here today, gang. And if anybody is out there, for example, that is looking forward to some drawing lessons and so forth, I've got a good website, drcontrast.com. Please feel free to visit that, and please join me at the drcontrast.com. I've got a 9-lesson plan system here to work with. Takes you from perspective all the way through to some illustration work, shading and volumetric work and the like. And also, if you have a moment, drop me a note at jim@drcontrast.com. That's my email address. Drop me a note if there's something you want me to work on and how to begin to put some pieces together for you. I'd be more than happy to help if I can. And from there, it'd be wonderful. And again, I really am interested in building my audience. So anybody who's interested in these kind of programs, please pass the word along that I'm on Tuesdays and Thursdays, usually from 2 to 3, 3:30 thereabouts. And we'll have some time and have some really good fun looking at certain things to work with here. And how to deal with some of the problems we face from day to day. I go through the same thing at this end as well. It's not easy to do, but again, thank you so much for the time invested in today's game. Hope all is well with you all. Take care of yourself. And I was on my stream with a very important message, and it's very truthful here from this point of view. Never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. Thanks very much, gang. Take care and have a good one.